Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. And since the new one comes out at the end of this week, I'm doing trivia reviews for the entire Final Destination film series. And I am starting off with the 2000 film Final Destination. Here is your trivia question for today. Which musicians' songs are used throughout the film? The answer will be at the end of this episode. In Final Destination, we follow a bunch of students that are about to go on a class trip to France. Our main character, Alex, takes a short nap before the plane takes off, but while doing so, he ends up having a horrifying premonition of the plane exploding. He starts to freak out, causing a scene, which then involves some of the other passengers. Now, all of them end up getting kicked off the plane. Now, some of the people are angry with Alex and some are just confused, but everyone ends up being in shock as the plane does take off and, in fact, explodes. Because of Alex's premonition, 7 people end up surviving and not dying in the accident. The problem with this is that it appears death is not done with them and tries to start taking each one of them out in horrifying ways. So, can Alex and the other survivors figure out death's design and keep themselves alive? This movie was directed and co-written by James Wong. The concept for this film was originally going to be a story for the television series The X-Files, which Wong also worked on as a writer and producer. And what's interesting is that potential episode was actually inspired by a movie called Soul Survivor from 1984. The 1976 film The Omen was also a partial inspiration, at least when it came to the rare accidents that led to death in this film. The TWA Flight 800 explosion and crash that happened in 1996 was also a big inspiration for the plane accident at the beginning of this film, and some of the news footage related to that was used in this movie. The original title for this film was not Final Destination, but Flight 180. They changed it as they didn't want there to be any confusion towards other plane movies like Air Force One and Con Air that had come out 3 years prior. They did something interesting with the entire cast of characters in this, as all of the surnames belonged to other filmmakers or horror film stars from the black and white era. Alex Browning was named for director Todd Browning. Todd Wagner was named for director George Wagner. Billy Hitchcock, as you can probably assume, was named for director Alfred Hitchcock. Carter Horton, named after star Edward Everett Horton. Terry Chaney, named after actor Lon Chaney. Valerie Luton, named after producer Val Luton. Larry Murnau, named after director F.W. Murnau. Krista Marsh, named after actress Marion Marsh. Blake Dreyer, named after director Carl Theodore Dreyer. Agent Schreck, named after actor Max Schreck. Agent Ween, named after director Robert Ween. Howard Siegel, named after director Don Siegel. And finally, we have the character of Clear Rivers, who, the first name Clear comes from the assistant of James Wong and Glenn Morgan, and the last name Rivers was actually a surname of one of the crew members. To the best of my knowledge, Tony Todd's character of William Bloodworth is not named for anyone specifically, but I did just want to mention that he's in this film because I love Tony Todd. The first draft of the script for this film did have 7 survivors, but they were all strangers. Due to the popularity, though, of teen slasher films, this ended up being about high school students. Also, in the original cut of the film, Alex and Clear did have a defined romance. This is why Alex has that heartfelt moment when he tries to sacrifice himself for Clear. In that original cut, he does in fact sacrifice himself, and then it's later on revealed that Clear is pregnant. This is also why Clear's hair changes from brown to blonde in that last segment in Paris, because at that point, Ali Larder had moved on to something else, and so they had to bring her back to film that sequence, and she no longer had the brown hair. Here's something I just found fascinating. Both Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst were up for the roles of Alex and Clear. This is, of course, 2 years before they would actually do the first Spider-Man film. The exterior of Miss Luton's house was built in 5 days. Something else that took 5 days was getting the alarm clock to fade from 1 to 180. Clear's family cabin is the same one that's used in the movie Lake Placid from the year prior. The title of the film is actually shown on the tag that gets attached to Alex's luggage by the stewardess. Right before Alex steps onto the plane, he looks down, and on the luggage cart, there is the number 666. Ever since this first film, the number 180 keeps showing up in the rest of the series. Here's one you may have missed, though. Near the end of the film, when they're in Paris, there is this large sign which has an 81 on the end of it, but when it comes swinging down, that little O is actually connected, so it's a backwards 180. Throughout the film, most of the characters foreshadow their own death. For instance, when Krista and Blake ask Alex to switch seats, Todd keeps making choking/cutting motions at his throat. Right before the plane blows up, there's a reflection of it on the window that appears across Billy's face, and this is right where his head gets cut off. In that same scene, Terry is standing in front of a picture of a bus. And right before Miss Luton's death, there's some smoke coming out of her computer and a knife in the stained glass window behind her, signifying the fire and, of course, getting the knife plunged into her chest. The plane explosion scene from this film was actually reused in the anime series Monster Musume. The body count for this film was 292. That's 287 passengers on the plane and the 5 main characters that get taken out. This movie was primarily filmed in British Columbia in both Vancouver and Victoria. It was also filmed in New York and France. As of the filming of this episode, there are 5 Final Destination movies, with a 6th one coming out at the end of this week. So when it comes to the film Final Destination, I love this movie and the absurdity of all of its deaths. Now, I won't say that it has the best acting, but this is a highly entertaining film with a lot of originality, so I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. And if you enjoyed this film, other movies I recommend checking out are Urban Legend, Escape Room, Saw 2, and Cube. Now it's time to answer the trivia question from the beginning of this episode. Which musician's songs are used throughout the film? That would be the legendary John Denver, who unfortunately died in a plane crash 3 years before this film was made, and that's more than likely why he was chosen. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, and keep an eye out as during the rest of this week, I'm doing trivia reviews for the rest of the series.